Frank Reich is the head coach. You beat Stanford to end that season to clinch that 10th win, the hottest team in the country. You can't keep them out, Joe.
So now Stanford, because they beat Boston College last week, okay.
Notre Dame's in the top 25 today. They're going to have 10 straight victories. There's no way they stay out. Now, are you telling me that they're going to get tripped up by NC State?
NC State's
undefeated. Still there? I don't even know.
NC State, Dave Torrance there.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Mike McDaniel got a personal victory.
Yeah, he get fired on the tarmac. Okay, I can
go
back. Yeah.
Well, this has been my take on the Dolphins. I think you'll agree. The more they lose, Tyreek Hill becomes the most important player in football. Because Tyreek Hill getting traded becomes likelier and likelier.
Yeah.
And Don, he's not going to get traded to the Cleveland Browns.
Correct.
This is a guy who's going to shift Super Bowl markets if he is dealt.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
NFL season with about 750,000 downloads. Really interesting when you look at the third and the fourth spot. You have Bet365 and Fanatics, which were, again, that first week, they were the only sports books that grew. The good news for the other sports books in terms of downloads this week is even when you take out Fanatics and Bet365, app downloads still grew about 20% across the board overall.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome in. Time to rise and grind here on the Early Line as we said goodbye to Week 3 in the NFL last night. We also maybe get to say goodbye to a number of Major League Baseball teams this week. Why? Well, it's the final week of the regular season here. Postseason baseball almost solidified. Got a lot to talk about there, not to mention, of course, Week 5 in the college football season. Hard to believe we are already at that point in the season. I'm Joe Ranieri, joined today, stepping in for the legendary Johnny Rightside, is our good friend Adam Kaufman, who, Adam, if I'm not mistaken, a week ago was your first appearance here as a guest on the Early Line, and apparently everyone was so impressed with it that they decided to have you back and put you in the host chair. So welcome in, my man. We got a lot going on this week.
Just climbing up the rungs of the ladder, my friend. Promoted. I love it. Love being with you as we are every Sunday here on SportsGrid too. So it's good to talk football again.
Yeah, it is. We got a lot going on here as we get prepared now for Week 4. And then, of course, Week 5 in college football. And somebody, please tell me it's not true, but I believe college basketball now 42 days away from starting. So it is that time of year. So let's dive into our 7 in 7 here, Adam, and we'll talk about some of these hot stories from the last 24 hours. And no better place to start than another great Monday night game that we got last night between the Lions and the Ravens. If you're a Lions fan, wow, you got to be impressed with what you saw there, especially as they ran the ball down the throat of the Ravens there in a 38-30 win, 218 yards, 4 scores between Gibbs and Montgomery last night. Haven't seen the Ravens get pushed around like that at home in a very, very long time.
Especially in primetime under Harbaugh. Very rarely happens. And I know we're going to dive deeper into this game as the show moves along, but I think the prevailing takeaway needs to be this is the class of the AFC. This is the team that so many people expect to be in the Super Bowl. I think Baltimore's looking pretty fraudulent right now, Joe. This is 3 games into the year, and congrats, you beat the tar out of the Cleveland Browns, but in 2 games against real opponents, you wind up melting down in the fourth quarter. Whether it's questions around Todd Monken's offense, obviously the defense is an absolute disaster, has been late in blowing that game in Buffalo to start off the season. And last night, very winnable game, a lead in the second half. Once again, the Ravens allowed to slip away against, don't get me wrong, a firepower of an offense out of Detroit and some stones, massive stones out of Dan Campbell with his aggressiveness on fourth downs. But nevertheless, you got to find a way to get a stop. And anytime the Ravens absolutely needed one last night, just didn't happen.
Yeah, it's we'll have more on this game coming up, but good news for Detroit, bad news for the 49ers, who learned, and we covered this game on In Game Live Sunday, and we saw it happen. We just weren't sure what was going on, but it is confirmed the 49ers star pass rusher Nick Bosa now out for the remainder of the 2025 season. Another torn ACL suffered in that game against the Cardinals, his second of his career. This one in the left knee. The first one was in his right knee. And it looks like, he's going to miss this season and maybe some of next season as well. Just the injuries keep coming for the 49ers.
Yeah, moreover, Joe, second of his NFL career. You're right about that. But he also, back in high school, partially tore the ACL in that same right knee that he just went all the way through this time around. So he has had a real issue with these ACL injuries and knew exactly what it was when it happened. The good news is it was clean, no additional ligament damage, makes for a better recovery, obviously, but he's not going to play again this year. And you're talking about a guy, 2 sacks, 8 pressures, 15 tackles, a pass rush win rate of 22%, game-saving tackles late in a pair of wins already out of the 3 the Niners have this year. Monumental loss defensively for a San Francisco team that, as we know, is already incredibly banged up. But could have Brock Purdy, maybe even Juwan Jennings back this weekend on the offensive side. Still, defensively, which has been something that was a real saving grace last time around for this team to help them to a win, took a huge, huge hit.
Cowboys star receiver also CeeDee Lamb, although not long-term, it appears he's still unlikely to play this week against the Green Bay Packers. High ankle sprain against the Bears. Coach Schottenheimer doesn't seem optimistic that he will be available for this game and said, quote, well, he might miss some time here. So doesn't sound great for the Cowboys, but he doesn't play defense. So what's the difference anyway?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what Schottenheimer says, honestly, if you listen to the owner, right? Jerry Jones is expecting him to be out 3 to 4 weeks and possibly hit injured reserve off of this high left ankle sprain, as you talked about. So that's a big loss. And like you said, defensively, the Cowboys have all sorts of issues that have plagued them now for multiple seasons. But offensively, you're talking about a guy who went for 100-plus receiving yards each of the first 2 games of the year before playing very limited snaps in this latest game, went out early, attempted to return. Like you said, we talked about it on In-Game Live. He just couldn't do it and was pretty quickly ruled out at that point. So it's all eyes on George Pickens. And this is part of the reason, not that you anticipate injury, but this is part of the reason that you go out and get a guy like Pickens, who was the number 1 receiver elsewhere. It wasn't like Brandon Cooks was going to be that guy. And so without Lamb now, you're going to hope that you get similar production and a similar rapport between Dak Prescott and George Pickens. Remains to be seen, but Pickens is off to a decent start here through a few games.
Well, the Giants could be upon the precipice here of the Jackson Dart era, as Brian Dable has refused to address whether or not Russell Wilson's status for this upcoming week as their starting quarterback is a real thing. He's holding off, which means, Dart could see some action. And, well, at this point, what do they got to lose here, Adam?
No, this is a Giants team that, honestly, not unlike the Cowboys, isn't going anywhere at all, Joe. I think a change is coming, whether that's week 4 or whether it's a couple weeks down the road. Russell Wilson bought himself some extra time going for 400-plus passing yards against Dallas. But, again, you go out this last week and intercepted a couple more times. The Giants just look uncompetitive offensively against a far superior defense from Kansas City. And Jackson Dart, this is a guy you drafted for a reason. You start to work in the future at this point.
Yeah, and well, we got some new news here in the ACC as it looks like coming off the heels of the announcement last month, the SEC says it's expanding its slate from 8 games to 9 games. Well, guess what? So is the ACC. You're going to want to follow the money here, folks. And the money says extra games are great for the pockets of these conferences here. And Auburn's men's basketball coach, Bruce Pearl, stepping down after a legendary career. And he's doing it just 42 days before Auburn's first game of the 25-26 season. Good news, his son, Steven, will be taking over now as head coach as he might look for maybe a political run in his future. And also bad news in the NBA as the Houston Rockets star point guard Fred VanVleet, torn ACL, likely out for the 25-26 season. All right, we got a lot to get to. We're going to start with breaking down what happened last night to the Ravens as the early line continues here on the Grid.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Remember these names: AZ Fudd, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts. Depending on who wins that lottery, that's going to depend on who goes one. If Washington wins, it's Fudd. She's from the area. If Dallas wins, they're going to bring Fudd to play with, obviously, Paige. If Minnesota wins, I think they go Miles with the point. If Seattle wins, they go with Miles, and the same thing with Chicago.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I was looking at it through my phone at first. I'm like, why is there such a delay? And why are we getting pitch hitters right away? Oh, the pitcher got thrown out for some reason. Maybe he hurt himself. But no, turning out and seeing a brawl was absolutely hilarious to let that one play out. Just the way it is sometimes in baseball. We don't get a lot of good fights and a lot of good brawls and anger, specifically from two teams that aren't going to the playoffs. So good on them for showing that moxie last time. But it's good to see a little bit of a brawl and a little bit of that passion here.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
If a game is on the line,
give me the Navy kicker.
Oh,
the guy's going into battle in 2 weeks. He can't make an extra point. Come on.
From a mindset perspective, yeah. I'm not. Listen, we thanked them for their service. I love them. Okay.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, if you have a bet and you have an academy kicker with a field goal or an extra point, you got to hold your breath.
27 yards. You know,
27 yards. The kid shanked it from like 30.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
And welcome back in the early line here on this Tuesday as we try to digest what we just watched here in a crazy week 3 of the NFL season. And if you thought it was going to get any less crazy to wrap up the week last night on Monday Night Football, you would have been wrong there. Joe Ranieri alongside Adam Kaufman as, listen, we all expected a bit of a high-scoring game last night between Detroit and Baltimore, and over-bettors absolutely crushed it. Might have been the rocking chair play of the day as they did end up with 68 points after all there, Adam. I think it closed at 52.5, 53, one of the higher totals we have seen thus far in 3 weeks in the NFL season. But it was how they went about getting those points. And for Detroit, it was all about the running game. We expect Baltimore to score its points because they've already scored, 40 points or plus in the first 2 games of the season. They only got 30 last night, but a big reason why is, time of possession as well. When you can run the ball as well as they did, Detroit, 218 yards between Gibbs and Montgomery last night and 4 scores. They had a 98 and a 96-yard touchdown drive in that game, chewing up a ton of clock. You just basically ran out of time if you are the Baltimore Ravens because you couldn't get off the field. Very impressive win for Detroit. Maybe some red flags now for the Ravens?
I think a bunch of red flags for the Ravens, and they come on both sides of the football, quite frankly. We alluded to it earlier defensively, Joe. This is a team that, again, just can't get off the field when it needs to. You mentioned those pair of 95-plus yard drives, first time that it happened in a single game in the NFL since the 2021 season, when ironically my Patriots, a team that had no offense to speak of at that time, because that was, remember, post Tom Brady, even post Cam Newton, that was the Mac Jones era to begin things. They did it, and we hadn't seen it since. This team, this Ravens team here is, it's alarming how bad they are when they need to be great. You see again a 15-point lead against Buffalo back in week 1 evaporate in the final 5 minutes of the game. And here in this game, at home no less, against a very good Lions team that, has been, I guess, a little up and down. Don't forget, they entered this season 2 new coordinators, offensive and defensive, and there were so many question marks around that. Looked terrible, both sides of the ball, in week 1 to open up the season against Green Bay. And it's like, oh man, this is the team that we're investing in. Maybe losing Ben Johnson, losing Aaron Glenn, this is going to be a real problem. They go out, obviously, in kind of that revenge game with Ben Johnson, and they blow doors, but part of you says, well, it's the Bears. How much can we really take from that? They got a real opponent next time around. Let's see what they do. And you see, I'm sure it wasn't a great night for the books, because you saw just about, or I'm sure it was a good night, pardon me, because you saw so many people on the Ravens, not only to win money line parlays, that type of thing. Hopefully people didn't go near them in Survivor, but people without hesitation taking them to cover the 4.5 points as the line climbed throughout the week, even getting to 5.5. And, there was Detroit just never out of this game, oftentimes leading this game. Baltimore goes up a touchdown coming out of the half, and you think, all right, maybe the Ravens are going to right the ship. And then, boom, we're tied again. Here comes the fourth quarter. And once again, it's Baltimore's inability to get a key defensive stop. 17-9, the Ravens were outscored in that fourth quarter. Part of it, I guess, you can look at and say, again, commend Dan Campbell for the wheelbarrow stones that he's walking around with there, with going for it on 4th and 2 with a 20-yard pass, Jared Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown, converting that and keeping that drive alive late. Hell of a job. But the Ravens, to me, as much as a gigantic red flag as the defense is, offensively, Joe, Derrick Henry, this is now 3 fumbles, 2 very crucial ones in as many games, 2 of those late in the fourth quarter, that one of them absolutely alters the impact against Buffalo. This one very well may have been as well. When you're trailing by a touchdown, you fumble the ball, Lions come back down, they score to go up 2 touchdowns. You get an opportunity again. Obviously, you narrow the gap, but even still, you're done. You're out of it. He's not running well, only has roughly 75 rushing yards the last 2 weeks combined. And Lamar Jackson, with that offensive line, was under absurd amounts of pressure late in that game. We remember earlier on in the contest, their first and goal from inside the 5, get to 2nd and goal from the 2, 4 downs, failed to score that touchdown at that point in time, including Lamar fumbling the ball on 4th down and having to run back and chase it 20 yards before finally getting tackled, and Detroit takes over there. So just so many issues for this Ravens team. A lot of people thought they were going to run away with this conference. They'll win their division because the division stinks, but here comes another playoff loss early on.
Yeah, battle of quarterbacks last night wasn't much of a battle. Goff got the running game, still throw for 200 yards. Lamar Jackson, 288, did have the 3 touchdowns, but Derrick Henry only 50 yards rushing last night, and they did an amazing job of bottling up Lamar. 7 sacks is an issue, and that offensive line, little bit of an issue. That defensive line, little bit of an issue here, and boy, oh boy, nothing like Harbaugh getting embarrassed on his own home field on a nationally televised game in an era where nobody beats Lamar Jackson on Monday Night Football, especially at home, as a favorite there. But we did see that line open up at 5.5 last week. It closed at 4. There was a ton of Lions money that came in there, pushed that line down, and ultimately that was the right side. So the Lions move on. They are now 2-1, and the reports of their demise, shall we say, a little bit over-exaggerated here in the NFC North. They still appear to be the class of that division. The Ravens, they got to go back to the drawing board and figure some things out, especially on that defensive side of the ball. So what a game it was, but injuries continue to pile up across the NFL. It is not good. Who's playing quarterback this week for some teams? We'll talk about it as the early line continues on the grid.
Jalen Hurts is a very good quarterback, and quite frankly, he doesn't get enough grace, I should say, for saying, I win football games. Like, what would you rather? We go play Mahomes, and, oh, man, 41-40, Hurts, 375, 4 touchdowns, they lost. Boy, that guy's good. Or no, hey, you know what? I'm going to play within myself. I'm not going to turn the football over. I'm going to play within the game script here, and we're just going to win. Doesn't matter who gets the accolades.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Biggest games, the biggest bets that you need to know. So much fun already, Joe.
Yeah, I'm having a good time.
Information now.
Yeah. Good games, not great, but again, it's college football. You can bet on them, nothing better.
Bet it, win. By the way, and I always like to say this, and it's true. Like, you can have the worst game in the world. You cash your ticket, it's like a Picasso. Like, that game was the best game I ever watched in my life.
Are you kidding?
Exactly.
Especially when you're hitting parlays.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
It is the biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings. And they're coming at this company, Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in the early line here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Ranieri alongside Adam Kaufman as we're still trying to put the pieces together here of what happened in week 3 of the NFL season. And what happened is, well, what usually happens each and every year. Some teams aren't as good as we might have thought. Some teams are better than what we might have originally thought. And we watched a couple of teams last night prove that Well, if you thought the Lions' opening game against Green Bay meant they were done and finished, well, guess again, because now that is 2 back-to-back performances. And maybe, Adam, the most impressive thing, and we heard a lot about Jared Goff's inability to go on the road, outdoors, at night, in the elements. Didn't matter very much. Jared Goff didn't need to do a whole heck of a lot in this game, because when you can hit it on the ground with 2 running backs for over 200 yards rushing, kind of makes his job a little bit easier. Didn't have to drop back and throw it 50 times last night. But I think the idea that the Lions were no longer the class of the AFC North, I think we need to reevaluate what's going on. They are very much, no Ben Johnson at all, but they are very much in the conversation of once again being the top dog in that division.
Yeah, to your point, you go back to week 1 when, again, just the offensive futility there for Detroit, and even against Green Bay, the defense didn't look so good either. Jordan Love was doing whatever he wanted, and I think there was a little extra energy with the Micah Parsons trade and all of that. But for Goff in that offense, people are screaming about the lack of creativity and losing Ben Johnson, and they don't know how to use their guys. They can't pass, they can't run, yada, yada, yada. Go out, destroy the Bears, and here they are against the Ravens. And this Ravens defense, and I know we can spend more time on this, defensively looks like that is just going to be the nail in the coffin for that team. They'll put up 30-plus points every single week on average, but defensively, when they face, real legitimate offenses, that's going to be an issue. And Detroit, right back to, you got value if you invested in Detroit, be it winning the division, winning over their win total, going over Super Bowl odds, all of that stuff after week 1, because they're right back to where they should be, a top 5 team in the Super Bowl odds. This is a team that has such incredible depth, as you talked about. Jared Goff, it was a rather pedestrian line. 1 touchdown pass, that's it, while his team put up 38 points, just barely crossed over 200 passing yards while floating the ball regularly to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Sam Laporta obviously was a force. Jameson Williams with a couple of big gains early, didn't do anything the rest of the way. I think he had those 43 receiving yards on that opening drive, and then he was quiet. But there are so many different ways this team can beat you, and of course, most notably, in that run game. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, both these guys, whether as rushers, as pass catchers out of the backfield, they will destroy you. It's the whole Sonic and Knuckles thing that we were doing all throughout last year, week in, week out. And Gibbs, they just bring different things. For Montgomery, there's an element of being a little bit more methodical, a little bit more determined. Obviously, he had that giant 70-plus yard run last night, which took him up over 100. And there's the explosiveness and the electricity surrounding Jahmyr Gibbs that he can get you individually so many different ways, whether it's rushing the football or having a handful of catches. And that's the thing with Gibbs, too. He had 5 catches, 6 targets. This is now through 3 weeks, I believe 18 catches, 19 targets. The guy is as sure-handed as you would hope to find for a running back out of the backfield. And, a guy that I think it's only a matter of time before we're looking at him as Offensive Player of the Year and all that stuff. I don't necessarily mean this year, but in his career. Obviously, it's very young. So, yes, this is a Detroit team to be reckoned with. They're going to be right there until the end. They're going to be a playoff team, and I expect them to go on a nice long run.
Good news for the Ravens is that at least Mark Andrews is back in the fold. A couple of big touchdown catches for him last night, but Zay Flowers kind of MIA, nowhere to be found last night for the Ravens. And Derrick Henry, once again, could it be that the big man, well, maybe just not only the fumbling problem, 3 consecutive games now in a fumble. Obviously, it didn't cost him against the Browns, but my goodness, that is not good. And he got stuffed on a couple of drives here, also in goal line situations where the defense of Detroit he could not shake loose, and only 50 yards is not great. Derrick Henry could very well be a lot of wear and tear, a lot of tread there taking off those tires of Derrick Henry in his career, not only in the NFL, but let's face it, it wasn't like he missed a lot of plays at Alabama either. So that worth keeping an eye on moving forward. Also, we mentioned quarterbacks. Who's playing this week for some teams? We'll break it down for you. The early line continues on the grid.
Jalen Hurts is a very good quarterback, and quite frankly, he doesn't get enough grace, I should say, for saying, I win football games. Like, what would you rather? We go play Mahomes, and, oh, man, 41-40, Hurts, 375, 4 touchdowns, they lost. Boy, that guy's good. Or no, hey, you know what? I'm going to play within myself. I'm not going to turn the football over. I'm going to play within the game script here, and we're just going to win. Doesn't matter who gets the accolades.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The biggest games, the biggest bets that you need to know. So much fun already, Joe. I feel
Yeah,
like
I'm
we got
having a good
lot of
time.
information
Loving
now.
it. Yeah. Good games,
Yeah.
not great, but again, it's college football. You can bet on them, nothing better.
Bet it, win. By the way, and I always like to say this, and it's true. Like, you can have the worst game in the world. You cash your ticket, it's like a Picasso. Like, that game was the best game I ever watched in my life.
Are you kidding?
Exactly.
Especially when you're hitting parlays.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
It is the biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings. And they're coming at this company, Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in here. The early line on this Tuesday is we've got to get ready, of course, for week 4 of the NFL season. And while week 3 was interesting, the injuries continue to pile up and questions continue to be raised about, well, who's the quarterback going to be this week? Injuries all over the place. And while lack of winning and being able to provide any offense has been a big problem outside of the one game against Dallas for Russell Wilson and the Giants, but if we're being fair, everybody can throw the ball on the Dallas Cowboy defense. So the fact that the Giants coach Brian Daboll was non-committal to the Russell Wilson starting again this week, well, guess what? That means maybe, just maybe, the Jackson Dart era may be about to begin. I mean, that is 3 games now. 2 of those games for the Giants with Russell Wilson, they couldn't get out of the single-digit category for points. Now, granted, they lost their kicker, before the game with Graham Minot. I don't know how that keeps happened last year against Washington, but yet they still managed to be able to score more than single digits. They weren't able to do that against the Chiefs at home. So now you got the Chargers coming up here. So the question is, should they make the move to Jackson Dart or stick with the plan and let Jackson Dart learn behind a veteran no matter what happens in Russell Wilson here, Adam? That's the dilemma.
Well, let's not forget, too, there are tea leaves to read when it comes to Brian Daboll. And I realize after week 1, he was a little non-committal, just somewhat non-committal to Russell Wilson. Russ comes back, has that great week 2 performance, albeit in a loss, not on him, more on the defense. And then obviously what happens in week 3. But this is kind of out of the Daboll playbook when it comes to the way he manages his quarterbacks. This is how he started to sound before he benched and eventually released Daniel Jones, who, as we know, is tearing it up with Indianapolis right now. So I think the writing is on the wall, Joe. I don't think they're going to be sticking to any sort of plan. I think it's panic time. This team is 0-3 in a division that is certainly not wide open. You know, the Eagles are going to win this division unless for some reason along the way they start to slump and the Commanders are able to overtake them. But either way, it's coming down to those 2 teams. It's not the Cowboys. And I would say that even if they had a healthy CeeDee Lamb, and it's certainly not the 0-3 Giants, but you're looking for respectability, right? I mean, You don't want to be right there flirting at the top of the draft with the number 1 overall pick again after you've just taken a quarterback. Even if you do, I guess, land there, you're going to use it to package down and maybe get more assets because you're not taking a QB at number 1. They believe in Jackson Dart. Now, to what degree remains to be seen, but he was good in the preseason. Limited opportunity, but he was good. Some numbers: 32 of 47, 372 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was mobile as well. So I think there are probably a lot of reasons that this team is looking to see Dart in action in games that matter. They've already, in the first couple of weeks, designed some plays for him. It's not like he's just been standing there on the sidelines holding a clipboard. He's found his way in certain packages onto the field in these games. You know, they're starting to knock some of the, I don't know, early nerves off and make that transition possible and get him ready for the madness, because it is coming. Russell Wilson is a stopgap. He's not an answer. Wasn't an answer in Pittsburgh, certainly not an answer in New York at this stage of his career. Guy was great back with Seattle, even had some moments with Denver, but he's toast right now. And so it's only a matter of time before we see that Jackson Dart, Malik Neighbors connection in action.
Yeah, no Tyrone Tracy either. He is going to be, he's shelved now with injury news, which means the Cam Scatabo era is officially underway. In fact, he was the only bright spot for the offense of the Giants in that game against the Kansas City Chiefs. But not only do we have a quarterback controversy brewing here in New York, question is, what do the Atlanta Falcons do after a absolutely miserable performance by Michael Penix Jr., and which watched all of a sudden Kirk Cousins come in the fourth quarter after a game was already out of reach? It was 27-0, and Raheem Morris pulls the plug on him. Kirk Cousins comes in, and you are paying this man $180 million to sit on the bench. And now there are going to be growing pains with a young quarterback like Penix Jr. We kind of knew it. You know, the athleticism, the more tape defensive coordinators get on him, the harder it's going to be. And I mean, quite honestly, it would have been one thing if this was a game he had against that defense of Detroit we saw last night. But to have it against the defense of the Carolina Panthers, would we be shocked if a couple of more performances that we scratch our head with, Raheem Morris has to go to his $180 million backup in Kirk Cousins here?
If it's a couple of more 30-0 losses where Penix looks like he doesn't know what he's doing, then no, I wouldn't be shocked. But pulling the plug right now, that would shock me. Let's remember, Joe, one thing is a mistake here. These two things can't exist simultaneously and both be right. You can't pay Kirk Cousins that massive contract that they did and then go out and take Michael Penix in the top 10 in the same draft year. You can't do it. One of those things was an error in judgment. You can't take Cousins, assume he's going to be your guy, and, you know, Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre, Jordan Love behind Rodgers' situation, conceivably in this era, sit Michael Penix for 2, 3, 4 years. It doesn't work that way in today's NFL. That's not the old days. In today's NFL, you get drafted to play, or to play at the very least, say, halfway through your rookie year. Patrick Mahomes doesn't sit a year behind Alex Smith anymore. You know what I mean? That stuff, it just doesn't happen. And so Penix, no, he didn't look good in the last game. He cost me some money. He cost a lot of people some money. But at the same time, this is someone that you got to go through the growing pains. You got to fight through it. You got to let him deal with it, because the second you start benching him and sort of, I don't know, getting in his head, and you have him reevaluating this, reevaluating that. He's going and talking to sports psychologists. He's losing confidence, faith in himself. It is the best way to make sure this does not work out. I mean, look at Anthony Richardson. How many times has he been, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out there in Indianapolis? And now, with the way that Daniel Jones is playing, Anthony Richardson may never see a snap at quarterback for the Colts again. Not a meaningful one anyway. He's done. It's over there. And that's the guy they thought was the future. If you're Atlanta, and I know you're paying Kirk Cousins a ton of money, you can't allow that to happen now with Michael Penix, because Cousins has nothing to do with your future. Bad contract. It has to age out, and then he's gone. Penix is the guy that you invested draft capital in. He is the guy that you believe in. He's the guy that you got to grow with.
It's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds because in many aspects they created their own drama thinking that there weren't going to be growing pains. And every time he falls flat on his face, there's going to be some rumblings about where is Kirk Cousins. Again, it's one thing to be a backup quarterback and make $3 million a year. To be a backup quarterback, you're paying $180 million and you're not winning games. Yeah, that pressure is going to be on Raheem Morris for the rest of the season for sure, until at least they decide to pull the plug and maybe trade Kirk Cousins. But at $180 million price tag, there's not a lot of teams that can just absorb that into their payroll. So we'll keep an eye on that as the weeks continue. Good news for the 49ers. Good news, bad news. Good news is Brock Purdy will be practicing this week. They are hopeful that he will be ready to go. He's already missed 2 games with a turf toe injury. But Mac Jones has stepped in and now won both of the games they didn't have him. He's 2-0 as a starter, but he got hurt in that game against Arizona as well. Aggravated the knee sprain that he also had an issue with during training camp. So they may not have the services of Mac Jones this week, which means Brock Purdy is going to have to be the go-to guy. Whatever the issue is, Brock, figure it out, get it better, rub some dirt on it, and get back in there. So we'll have more on the NFL, but we got to talk week 5 of college football. It's put up or shut up time for some teams. We'll talk about it here in the early line.
Let's play a little game of buy or sell. It would appear from most of the reports, George, that Mike McDaniel is going to keep his job as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. This is a long season, though, and they're already 0-3. Buy or sell, McDaniel will be the Dolphins' head coach at the end of the season.
He's going to get fired. All right, it's either now, later in the season, at the end of the season. He's not making it to next year. So the only question is, do they let him go towards the end of the season here? New York, Carolina, Chargers, Cleveland, Atlanta, Baltimore bye. Atlanta, Baltimore, Buffalo, Washington going into that bye. And that Washington game, by the way, is in Europe somewhere. So I don't think he survives that. I don't think he's going to survive the bye week. I think it's going to go 1-3 of those games, maybe even lose all 4 of those games. No. And I think they will trade some players away, so they're going to be a worse team than they are now here. No, I'm going to sell this. He does not make it to the end of the season. I think they're going to fire him after week 11, if I had to guess. I think it's the perfect spot because not only is there a bye week, tough schedule beforehand, but then you have New Orleans at home. Good place for a new coach to start.
My thing is this, George, and here's why I am going to buy this. I think he's going to make it through the year and then he's going to be fired. Is because I just think it is rock bottom right now. They're 0-3. So, are they going to lose 3 consecutive games again this season? I don't think so. I think they're going to win 6 games or 7 games, which tells me it's win, loss, 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 win, loss, loss, So I just think they make the change at the end of the year. If they're not going to make it now and they're 0-3, the only thing that I would say to caveat would be is if they lose in their next game. If they lose that next game, then 0-4, yes, I think it happens. I don't think they will, though. So I am going to buy this.
Fantasy Sports Today. Fridays starting at 3 p.m. Eastern. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in here, the early line on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Ranieri alongside Adam Kaufman. And before we talk some college football coming up this week, week 5, we're going to learn a lot about a few teams here this week with this schedule. Just to continue that conversation we were having about what are some teams going to do, starting quarterbacks remain a big question. And we're only heading into week 4 now, so we could possibly have a quarterback change in the Jackson Dart era for the Giants. It looks like Brock Purdy will be back this week. Jaden Daniels, though, also a big question mark. We're hearing from Dan Quinn that he is a day-to-day situation right now, which isn't good. But, this is the unsung hero here in the NFL, and maybe one of the worst-kept secrets is you better have a competent backup quarterback to be able to hold the fort down. Now, there's limits to this, right? Asking a backup quarterback to, win you 6 games in a row here to try to save your season is one thing. But a good backup quarterback should be able to get you 2 wins like Mac Jones just did in San Francisco for Brock Purdy. I don't know that there's any rush to get Jaden Daniels back on the field. I wouldn't, if I was Dan Quinn, be rushing to get him back out on the field, not with an experienced guy in Mariota who just helped your team put up more offense and more points than Jaden Daniels had in the 2 games that he's played so far this season. So, don't forget, he's a second-year quarterback now in Jaden Daniels that didn't even look remotely close to what he did a year ago. And again, you give defensive coordinators year of tape on you to figure out what your tendencies are. You're not going to be as electric as you were a year ago. But Mariota, I think, more than capable of holding the fort down here for Washington, which is why you need a capable backup here. So I wouldn't push him, and I don't think there's a rush to get him back out on the field at this point, as long as Mariota can continue to deliver offensively like he just did last week against the Raiders.
No, couldn't agree more. I mean, like you said, Mariota with more offense in that one game than Daniels had in the first 2 combined. I realize, there was a good Packers defense in there in that loss, sandwiched in between the couple of wins that the Commanders have had so far, beat up on the Giants there in week 1. But Mariota, to your point, is a very experienced pro, just a good, solid journeyman backup quarterback who, as you noted, is capable of coming in and winning you games. To me, that I was invested in Washington to cover this past week. I saw a lot of value in that line as it plummeted from 7.5 points to 3.5 points with the news that Jaden Daniels was not going to play. To me, massive overreaction against a very underwhelming Seattle team, especially, or Vegas team, pardon me, especially defensively. On the other side, you're thinking about Pete Carroll, you immediately think of Seattle. This Vegas team, not great. And so Mariota was able to them out there, torch them offensively. And I think that right now, as you said, you look ahead to this upcoming schedule for Washington, and sure, you'd like to win the division. It is Philadelphia's right now. It's 3-0 versus 2-1, and probably will belong to the Super Bowl champs by the end of the regular season as well. But Mariota, without a doubt, gives you a chance to at least stay alive in the fight. This coming weekend, you have the Falcons. Will this team be a little bit desperate to respond to what just happened and everything we've been talking about with the poor play from Michael Penix and anyone feeling like jobs are on the line? Sure, entirely possible, and it's in Atlanta as well. Still, I think Mariota out there is going to be more than serviceable offensively, so it comes down to, can your defense do its job? Are you going to win against the Chargers the following week, whether it's Mariota or Daniels? I'm not sure it really makes a difference the way that LA is going right now. It's just, this Chargers team is looking like a true bona fide contender, and quite possibly a team that wins this AFC West. First time the Chiefs haven't won it in nearly a decade, if that comes to fruition. And then you keep going. Bears, Cowboys. I'm not saying this is what they want, but you have a stretch here where if you really felt it would be beneficial to Jaden Daniels to kind of loosely shut him down. I know they wouldn't use those terms. They'll go week to week for as long as possible. But if you wanted to internally have those conversations, Joe, about shutting this guy down for about a month, it's a very favorable time on the schedule to do it. And I think you'll be more than treading water with Mariota out there.
I'll give you 2 quick ones here, Adam. You can give me yes or no, because the quarterback position in a lot of places, there are some question marks here. After what we just watched in Minnesota with Carson Wentz, obviously the more experienced quarterback stepped right in. Didn't have to do a lot because the defense did the heavy lifting. But you know what? Getting the ball to the guys that matter is J.J. McCarthy. Is his job in trouble here? Does Minnesota say, you know what? Take your time. Let's go with Carson Wentz. And again, we'll see where it goes from here. Or does he get inserted no matter what as soon as he's ready to go?
The answer is both. I think they're okay with him taking his time, and the forecast for this injury was 3-4 weeks with his high ankle sprain. But it's his job when he's ready. They already sat him all of last year. Didn't have a choice, obviously, with the injury, but he sat all of last year. This is a guy that was a high first-round pick that is your future, not the journeyman Carson Wentz, who's been bouncing around the league since his time in Philadelphia. But right now, you could argue that Wentz is a bit of an upgrade on what we've seen from McCarthy, who has been flat out bad in 7 of his 8 quarters. Still, when McCarthy is ready, it's his job.
I would, without a doubt, if I am the Cincinnati Bengals, you have to get on the horn to Atlanta and see if you can figure out a way to get a trade involved here in some way, shape, or form here, because my goodness, unless they're going to do something Atlanta where, they're already firing offensive coaches here, passing game coordinators, wide receiver coaches. So unless that Cousins is going, they're planning on utilizing Cousins, Cincinnati has got to do something, because I'm sorry, that was the worst loss in franchise history. It was embarrassing. You need a quarterback, and I don't know if Browning is going to get it done for you. We'll talk some college football week 5 next year on the Early Line.
There are right now 10 teams who are 0-2. Every team on this list is 0-2. These are the 7 teams through 2 weeks who have already been eliminated from the Super Bowl picture. First, the Cleveland Browns, who I believe were the worst team coming into this season. The Cleveland Browns are absolutely done.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Josh Heupel. Please, dude, you got to be kidding me. How do you lose this game at home when you've got Georgia on the ropes with a iffy quarterback at best there in Gunnard, and you somehow figure out a way to lose that game? A game, Donnie, of which was pretty much in hand for Notre Dame, 3/4 of it.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
All right, welcome back in here, the Early Line on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Ranieri alongside Adam Kaufman. As well, week 3 in the books in the NFL. We have said goodbye to week 4 of the college football season. So week 5 is straight ahead here, Adam, in college football. Good news is Arch Manning actually found a team he could look competent against, but he won't be playing the Sam Houstons of the world. Much else. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of questions.
Were you watching Were you watching him in the end zone standing over guys as he's running in the ball? Like I love I've seen it all over social media too. Like, Arch Manning is flexing on guys that are going to be, DoorDash drivers in a few years. Like, can we act like you've been there before just a little bit?
Yeah, well, he hasn't. That's the problem. And you got to know your audience. And his audience was anybody watching him score a touchdown, he was over the top. But, live and learn. And Texas is going to have its hands full coming up the rest of the way. But so are some of these other teams here. We got big top 25 matchups. And it's put up or shut up time here. Alabama taking on Georgia. This is a rivalry that Kirby Smart has dominated here recently. Certainly, Nick Saban is long gone in Alabama. Kalen DeBoer, and nice, some guys love him, some guys hate him. Every time he loses a game, his job's on the line, apparently. But a big win on the road against Georgia would go a long way to kind of maybe settling down the let's pay him and get him out of here crowd that we heard a lot about after Alabama lost to Florida State, which, by the way, that doesn't look like a terrible loss now, does it?
No, it doesn't, but still, it is a 2-touchdown loss, and Alabama, if nothing else, it's that Alabama name, right? With the Crimson Tide, the expectations are always higher, no matter what's going on, obviously, with Florida State and the fact that this team is looking more than competent. But you go out and your 2 wins are against Louisiana Monroe and Wisconsin. Wisconsin just lost as a 10-point favorite at home. So, it's not like those wins are looking particularly impressive either. I think for me, Joe, and this will bear itself out, but I don't expect it to be all that inspiring against Georgia. Do you really feel like you can trust Ty Simpson? Are you a believer in Ty Simpson right now? I'm not. I don't feel like this is a team that's going anywhere, that's doing anything. I don't necessarily trust the post-Nick Saban coaching, and I definitely don't trust the quarterback situation. I think the offense has been way too inconsistent, sloppy, and just uninspiring. And so I think Georgia's going to roll them in this game. I don't think this is even going to be competitive.
Garner Stockton there. We'll see if he can get it done at home against Bama. And listen, congratulations, Coach Franklin. You have the 3 absolute cupcakes of cupcake games that you have in your bag. But now Penn State, all the hype around this team. All right, well, Happy Valley, welcome into Oregon, number 3 versus number 6. So the big question is, we're going to learn. Is Oregon back? Is Penn State really as good as everyone thinks they are in this game? 3.5 right now on the board.
Rematch of the Big Ten Championship. Obviously, the most important thing from this one, Joe, is the winner gets a tiebreaker, in that conference, which is so substantial, obviously, going forward, because it's certainly conceivable these teams finish with the same record by the end. We're still so early on in this season. I think Penn State's offense is, obviously one to be reckoned with. They're always a team that you're looking at there. You're considering overs, you're considering the team total overs, all of that in their matchups. Now, obviously, you're going up against a defense that could slow you down just a little bit. Obviously, a prolific offense on the other side as well. I don't know that I got this hot take surrounding the spread and who ultimately wins this game, but for me, it's the over. I just think we're going to get a boatload of points in this game. I don't think we're going to have too many stops. I think you're going to see these teams run up and down the field all the way throughout, and wouldn't surprise me if Oregon prevailed, but I just don't want to bet against Penn State in this situation.
Tough place to go in and win at, that is for sure. But some great, and I mean great college football games coming up, not just this week, but over the next couple of weeks. And I can tell you, down here in Florida, the Florida State University of Miami game coming up also is maybe the biggest thing to happen down here since the Dolphins going undefeated when none of us were ever born. So a lot going on in college football. We got a lot going on, of course, in the NFL, Major League Baseball. We'll have it all for you as another hour of the early line is next on the grid.